I have 4 DJ decks. What do I do? So the primary reason for 3 or 4 deck layouts is due to redundancy. If one CDJ or deck fails, you still got 2 or 3 more left. Any less than that, and you're probably cooked, bro. Don't worry, it's not your fault, it's the venues. Sometimes that just happens. However, if you really want to take your DJing to the next level and add just a little bit more to your mixes, I recommend that you take advantage of those decks as much as reasonably possible. So, how do I do that? Well, it really depends on what genre you're mixing. General bass, for example, doesn't really rely on 4 decks all that much. You could easily get away with doing great mixes on just 2 of them. You could just load up acapellas on the extra decks and maybe a fallback track. Rhythm and dubstep DJs could easily fill these 4 decks up. Decks 1 and 2 could be used for primary mixing, while decks 3 and 4 would have tracks preloaded for double drops, and for rhythm, just more rhythm tracks. Acapellas could also be loaded on those other decks for mashups. What I just said could also be applied to drum and bass as well. Techno and house is where 3 and 4 decks really shine, and I think are almost a necessity for amazing pro level mixes. All of the decks could be loaded up with different songs and mixed with their different elements. Deck 1 could have the kick drums, deck 2 could have the percussion, and decks 3 and 4 could have samples or ambience. It's basically the closest you can get to creating an actual track live, and once you do it for the first time, you really start to see why James Hype does it all the time. Remember earlier in how I told you to take advantage of those extra decks as much as reasonably possible? The reason I said reasonably is to only do it when you really want to, and of course when you have the fundamentals of basic DJing solid in your mind. This is by no means a beginner skill, and it takes a lot of time and practice to really get this down to do it comfortably live. And of course, like other things in this field, too much of it could ruin it. Just do what the vibe tells you. Don't overcomplicate yourself by always having to use 4 or 3 decks. Just go with the flow. Sometimes you really only need 1 or 2 decks. View it as an extra useful tool you have on your belt. So, unfortunately, the reality is you probably won't get to use more than 2 decks live anyways, especially if you're just someone coming onto the scene. It's more likely that in the beginning you'll be booked for lounges or really small venues with only 2 decks available, or if you're really fucking unlucky, you'll end up with 1. Trust me, it's happened before. 3 or 4 decks are really only exclusive to really big venues and main stages, but even then I don't really see many main stage DJs use them in a creative way. I've maybe only seen it happen like twice, and they were both rhythm DJs, so you know, they're addicted to that shit. So hopefully that answers your question.